Hi. Yeah, everybody, continue. Yeah. Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for the invitation. And I'm sorry that Juan couldn't attend. And what I wanted to talk about today is effects of high density phase transitions on neutron star dynamics. And basically, the question that I want to address is what is the state of matter at very high densities? And the short answer is that basically that is nowadays it is unknown, because there is no standard method to solve QCD in general in the non-perturbative regime. So we know that at low densities we have hadronic matter where the quarks are confined in hadrons, and at very high densities we have some confidence on perturbative QCD that predicts that there will be a plasma of free quarks and gluons going around. So the expectation is that at least between these two different states, the hadronic matter and the quark-gluon plasma, there will be one phase transition. And this phase transition, it can be either a sharp one, a first-order phase transition, where we have an inner core, like it is shown in the picture, an inner core with quarks and outer core with a hadronic matter and a very sharp quark-hadron interface. Or it can be a smooth transition where there is an inner core of quarks and outer core of hadrons, but there may be a mixed phase where you have a smooth transition from the hadronic matter to the quark core. So about this possibility of finding this phase transition at high densities, what is not clear is what kind of phase transition has to be expected, because there is no clear favorite theory nowadays, and it depends on the approximation on QCD that is being used to solve the problem. So some possibilities includes quark matter, or some sort of hyperons, or strange matter, or some sort. So there are different options depending on how you approximate the QCD to solve the problem, and it is not clear which one is the correct nowadays. So the idea is that we could actually check or perform some experiments or to check in nature if there are clues on what is the state of matter at these high densities. So we can, the easiest thing that we have been done so far is to look for effects at low densities of this transition of this state of high densities directly in some Earth laboratories. It is an indirect measure, and then we could extrapolate to see what happens at higher densities. Or another possibility is look for effects of this high density state of matter in astrophysical laboratories. So that is looking at astrophysical objects where matter may be present in a different state than in Earth and in a very much higher densities. And on that side, neutron stars is the perfect candidate to prove extreme physics for different reasons. First, neutron stars is the remnant, or is the result of a supernova explosion, which has a typical mass between 1.2 and 2 solar masses, and typical radius of 10 kilometers. So that implies that if we compute the compactness of the object, that is, give us a measure of the gravitational field potential, and it basically can be computed like mass over radius in geometric units, it is of the order of 0.1 or 0.3. So this is a high number, especially if we compare with black holes that have a compactness between 1/2 and 1, depending if it is rotating or non-rotating. So it is a factor 2 or 3 less compact than a black hole, but it is probably the highest or the most compact object besides the black holes or below the black holes. At this compactness, matter is present at very high densities, much higher than nuclear density. So neutron stars can support densities a factor 2 or 3 above nuclear density. And in addition, there are also strong magnetic fields that can go from 10 to the 10 to 10 to the 16 Gauss, which are much stronger than any magnetic field that can be produced in Earth. So it is the perfect proof for extreme physics, and in particular for what is the state of matter at high densities. So, but so far, the observations of neutron stars, and in particular the masses of neutron stars, can be explained with the hadronic matter. So their existence and so far doesn't require any phase transition. So it is not clear if well, at least from the current observations, there is no indication that there should be or that it is required another state of matter in the core to explain the current observations. But perhaps this is either because, well, there are two possibilities. Either there is no such phase transition, so there is only hadronic matter, or that the phase transition happens at very high densities and are not easy to be observed from with the current observations from outside. So the idea, or the idea that appeared a few years ago, is that the neutron star evolution, like accretion, collapse, or the coalescence of a binary, may push the stars past this phase transition, and this sudden change will change the dynamics of the system in a significant way, such that it could produce observable effects, either in gravitational waves or in electromagnetic signals. And this is basically what I'm going to consider in this work. And as you all know, well, after more than 20 years of searching for gravitational waves or direct detections of gravitational waves, in 2015, there was the first detection of a binary neutron star binary black hole merger by the LIGO observatories, where it could be observed the coalescence merge, the coalescence, that means the in spiral merge and ring down of a binary black hole system. And that was the first observation. Since then, there have been 3 observational runs, O1, O2, and O3. In the first 2, actually, there is a catalog of the first 2 where there were found 10 binary black holes and a binary neutron star merger, which is the signal on the bottom right, that is much longer than the others. So the masses are different, so the time scale is different than for black holes. And in the observational, on the third observational run, there have been observed about 50 binary black holes and an additional binary neutron star signal. And what I'm showing here in this catalog is, or what it is shown in the catalog in general, is the gravitational wave, that is the wave at the bottom, and then the frequency of the main mode of the gravitational wave signal that appear as a function of time. So you see how the frequency, that is the chirp frequency, increases at the time of the merger. So we went from first detection to gravitational wave astronomy and to multi-messenger astronomy, because in the first detection of the gravitational wave, it could be observed almost simultaneously some electromagnetic signal, so a short gamma ray burst that was coming from the same source. It was GRB 1708-17A, that happened just 2 seconds after the peak of the gravitational waves. So that was the first direct indication that short gamma ray bursts were produced, or could be produced at least in the merger of binary neutron stars, and this idea or this observation was confirmed by a plethora of electromagnetic emission that happened few hours, or that was observed few hours after the merger. So in the plot, you can see how the gravitational wave shape signal peak at time equals 0. 2 seconds later, we observe the short gamma ray burst coming from the same source. And then a few hours later, there were some signals in ultraviolet, optical, and infrared that were appearing, that were being produced by the ejecta, the matter being ejected during the merger, that was unstable because it had too many protons, and so they were radioactively unstable and decay to produce stable atoms, stable protons, nucleons, and in that process it would emit heat or energy photons that could hit that matter, and eventually that matter will be optically thin, and that heat will be released, and it will be observed as basically as a black body. So that is the kilonova emission that could be observed a few hours later. So all these three observations, the gravitational wave with the short gamma ray burst with the kilonova emission, was the final proof to show that our models of neutron stars were basically correct. That they could produce gravitational waves, they could produce short gamma ray burst, and that the ejected material could also emit this black body kilonova emission. So now that we have multi-messenger astronomy as a tool, we can go back to the neutron stars and use them, or to do precise observations to test this extreme physics that I was talking about, and in particular, the presence of a phase transition in neutron stars. And the idea is that even if you start with a state or with a star that doesn't have a phase transition because the density is not high enough, during the merger, the remnant is going to have a much higher mass, much higher density, and it is going to go above the phase transition or to the other side of the phase transition. It's going to undergo a phase transition dynamically. And that dynamic phase transition evolution is going to change the quadrupolar moment of the star. It's going to change the gravitational waves being radiated. And that is actually what was studied in this seminal work of Radice and collaborators, where they considered two different equations of states that encapsulates all the information on the phase transition, on the matter that is in the interior of the star. And they considered two different equations of states that could model either only hadronic stars or a combination of hadronic stars in the outer core with some hyperons in the inner core, and with a smooth transition between the two states. So on the panel in the right top, you can see the equilibrium configurations for these two equations of states. The DD2 is the one with only hadrons, and the BHB lambda is the one with hyperons. And as you can see, the presence of hyperons decreases the maximum mass that can be achieved in that star. It softens the equation of a state in some sense. But at low densities, below 2 times the nuclear density, the two equations of states are indistinguishable. So this means that during the spiral, if the masses of the stars are below 2 or 2 point something the nuclear density, we are not going to see any effect because both stars will be in the hadronic phase state. But if the mass goes above that level, there will be differences because there will be a phase transition, even if it is a smooth one, in one of the equations of a state. And that is actually what is shown on the plot on the bottom left. That is basically the results of their paper. They consider binaries with two identical stars with the mass of 1.35, 1.4, and 1.5 solar masses, so that they are very close to the phase transition or just at the brink of the phase transition. And during the spiral, you couldn't see any difference. But after the merger, because they go to much higher masses and densities in the remnant, the dynamics is different. And basically what happens is that either the frequency of the remanent with the phase transition is higher, that is the B lambda, or that because the mass is too high, and it directly collapses to a black hole when there is this phase transition to another state. So in any case, what it shows is that the results of the dynamics and the gravitational waves is very different if you consider that there is a phase transition, that there is another state, or if you only consider hadronic matter. And after this work, there have been many others considering different phase transitions to different core solutions, either with quarks or with hyperons or with equations of state derived from holographic theories. And most of them, or basically all of them, found the same results, that the induced phase transition can change the dynamics of the system enough so that it will produce some observables in the gravitational waves. So these are basically the recent works in the last years. What we did is to, or what I am going to explain in this talk. First, I will give a brief introduction on numerical relativity, just in case you are not familiar with. Then we studied isolated neutron stars, where we induced the phase transition by accreting matter in the neutron star that could be either rotating or non-rotating. And we made some analysis or a simple study of what is the impact of the deep phase transition of the observability of electromagnetic signals. Then we repeated the same or similar cases as it had been before, studied before with binary neutron star coalescence, where they Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, I got disconnected for a moment, sorry.
But not your transparencies. Okay.
I think he's doing. Can you share your? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Okay, sorry. So I was saying that we will first study isolated neutron stars and see what is the impact of the phase transition of the observability of electromagnetic signals, and then we will also study binary neutron star coalescence and see what is the effect of the phase transition during the merger of the binaries. And what it will be different from other cases is that we will consider not only identical stars but also unequal mass cases, and that we will not focus on a particular equation of a state, but we will be agnostic about the properties of the phase transition. And I will explain later what I mean by this. So first, let me introduce briefly on numerical.
Yeah, you were gone again.
Hello? Hello? Yeah, sorry. So, can you hear me?
Yes, you're back, Carlos. Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, me too.
Okay, sorry. I think it's this connection. So I was saying that Yeah, that numerical relativity. Okay. Numerical relativity is the area that tries to solve Einstein equations using computers. And basically, what we want to solve are the Einstein equations that for the metric or for the space-time metric G that is coupled to the matter that is given by a stationary tensor. So these are the Einstein equations that for black holes we can consider the stationary tensor is 0. But since we're interested on neutron stars, the matter in neutron stars is modeled by a perfect single fluid, which is described basically by the density, its internal energy, the pressure, and the forward velocity. So it can be written the stationary tensor for this perfect fluid in this equation, following this equation here. And the matter basically follows some conservation laws, conservation of energy momentum, the conservation of the baryonic number, and then all the microphysics, all the information about the particle interaction, the strong particle interaction, is encapsulated or is represented in the equation of state. That is just a macroscopic equation that relates the pressure with the density and the internal energy, and that contains all the information about all the microphysics. So in particular, the phase transition will be modeled or will be included by changing or by modifying this equation of state. Well, these are covariant equations that we first need to convert these covariant equations into evolution equations by using the 3+1 decomposition, where we split the space-time in time and space, and the space-time metric in the lapse, shift, and a space-like metric. Then we need to choose some system of coordinates, which are usually called gauge conditions, to close the system of equations. And we have to combine the constraints with the evolution equations in order to get a well-posed system at the end. In our case, we choose a formulation of the Einstein equation that is called conformal and covariant set for formalism. And at the end, basically, you have like of the order of 20 equations with thousands of terms that basically you have to introduce in the computer. And once you have the evolution equations, you need to discretize space and time and the equations in such a way that you preserve the well-posedness into the discrete system, so that you get a stable and convergent solutions. So the techniques that we use are, we use a fourth-order Runge-Kutta for the time integration, fourth-order space discretization for the Einstein equation that has to satisfy some summation bypass rule that is necessary for stability. And for the fluid, we will use different methods in order to deal with the shocks that may appear generally in those equations, in the hydro equations, that are called high-resolution shock capturing methods. And in addition, well, because we are interested on many scales that appear in the problem, it will not be enough to one computer to solve all the domain, all the scenario. So we need to parallelize the problem and to split the domain in small pieces between different computers. And we want to put more resolution only in the regions that it is required. We want to resolve some features better than others. In particular, we would like to resolve very well the interior of the stars. We would like to resolve fairly well the orbital motion. And we would like to resolve also the far zone region where we can measure electromagnetic and gravitational wave signals. So this is done by using adaptive mesh refinement and parallelization that is provided by the Sunray infrastructure, where and the equations and the evolution equations and the numerical techniques are implemented in this infrastructure by using a software called Symphony that generates automatically the code once it is written in some particular form. So the final combination of this infrastructure and code generation is called MHT Duet. and that is the code that we are going to use in general. And what we are going to study, as I said before, is basically the coalescence of binary neutron star, where we will see three stages, the in-spiral, merger, and ring down. And we will focus in the times or in the phase near the merger, where one cannot use other approaches, and only the numerical solutions are available to solve the dynamics of the Einstein equations. And as an example, this is basically what the kind of simulation that we are going to perform. Here I am showing an equatorial plane of the simulation. On the left, you can see the density of the two neutron stars that are going at their orbit around each other. On the right, you see a zoom out of the full domain, where you can see also the gravitational waves that are being emitted. And at the bottom, you can see actually the mode or the main gravitational mode of the gravitational waves. Basically, we compute the psi4 that contains the information on the gravitational wave. We perform, or we decompose it in a spin-weighted spherical harmonics, and this is the main mode of those spherical harmonics. So the signal increases in frequency and amplitude as they go to the merger, and then in the ring down, the post-merger, you can see how the star is bouncing around. The remnant is rotating fast, and then the signal and the frequency increases. Okay, so now that I said the scenario, the first thing that I'm going to show is induced phase transition in isolated neutron stars, where, as I said before, I am going to, or all the information on the internal structure of the star is encoded in this equation of state. So we will use an equation of state that is called hybrid equation of state that has a thermal part that is given by the ideal equation of state that allows heat or transfer of energy between the shocks and heat, and a core contribution that is given by a piecewise polytropic equation of state. And this piecewise polytropic equation of state, or many equations of state, can be described with only 4 segments with different transition densities and different adiabatic indices. So we know that what this adiabatic index and coefficients should be for at low densities, and what it is unclear is what is the value at high densities, and this is where different approximations give rise to different equations of state. So, for instance, one equation of state that is still compatible with the current observations and constraints on the mass and the radius of the neutron stars is the SLY that I'm showing here, that can be described with these 4 segments with these adiabatic indices and these transition densities. And in this work, we have considered 3 modifications of this equation of state with showing all of them a phase transition that can be seen as a first order phase transition that can be seen as one of the segments having an adiabatic index equal to 0. So to be more clear, if we show the pressure as a function of the density for these 4 different cases, as you can see, the SLY would be the straight line in black that shows no phase transition, and the other 3 have a flat segment that is basically that indicates where is the phase transition, a first order phase transition. So here, as I said at the beginning, we are going to be agnostic, and we are not going to try any physically motivated equation of a state with a phase transition, and instead we are going to construct a equation of a state with a phase transition just by changing some of the parameters of this or parameterizing this equation of a state. Basically, what we will do is we will add a phase transition with a size delta rho that will be a flat that will be indicated as a flat at the flat region in the P rho diagram with different sizes. And the effect of this change in the equilibrium configurations is shown on the right. This stellar mass as a function of the radii, where each of the points here is an equilibrium configuration. And as you can see, the maximum mass that one could achieve with this equation of a state, the unmodified equation of a state, is around 2. If you just modify it a little by adding a very small phase transition, very narrow phase transition would be the C case that just slightly decrease the maximum mass. The A case has a slightly larger phase transition, and then it decreases even more the maximum allowed mass. And if the phase transition is very large, is very wide, it would be the B case, where directly it decreases the stellar mass, the maximum stellar mass. So this indicates that basically the B case is going to be unstable above the cyan dot. That is basically the initial star that we are going to consider in our simulations. So as I was saying before, we are going to let some matter accrete into these non-rotating neutron stars, and the accretion of matter is going to increase the mass of the star and to induce increase the mass, increase the density, and then induce a phase transition. And what it happens is that as the system undergoes, as the neutron star undergoes this phase transition, the density at the center jumps very quickly or very suddenly from the hadronic to the quark state, and then it oscillates. After some time, it oscillates back, and if there are some oscillations between the crossing this phase transition that are damped with time, and that are only present, of course, in the equations of a state that have some phase transition in the equation of a state. So that happens for the A and C cases, that there are some oscillations crossing the phase transition which are damped with time. And if in the B case, the star was already unstable above that, about some mass, so directly it collapses to a black hole. So depending on if the phase transition is very wide, the resulting star is going to be unstable to perturbations or to increases in mass or in density. So we did the same with considering rotating stars, and we found similar results. But what is more interesting is that we could also consider magnetized neutron stars where we induce the phase transition or where we induce this phase transition. And in the phase transition, there are basically what changes is the density in the core of the star. And so that produces some distortions in the core that in the magnetic fields in the core region that could propagate through alpha waves to the exterior and to the surface of the star, and then they may be observable in the pulsars, right? So the idea is that if we have some neutron star that contains some strong magnetic fields, we observe indirectly these magnetic fields in pulsars. And if there is some strong or significant change in the interior of the star that modifies these magnetic fields, we may observe indirectly the effect if it arrives to the surface of the star. So that was the idea. So we performed these simulations comparing the equation of state without phase transition with one with phase transition. And here I am showing just a meridional plane, the magnetic fields in the meridional plane at different times for the two equations of state that I am talking about. And in silver color, I am showing the rotational of the core of the magnetic field. So as you can see, there is a twist of the magnetic field lines indicated by a curve different from zero in the core region, in the case C. But actually it remains there and then it slowly fades away without changing significantly the magnetic field at the surface. So it seems that the magnetic field distortions, even if there are some in the core due to these phase transitions, do not propagate easily to the surface of the star. We can check now what happens during the coalescence of bineutron stars, where the merger will trigger the phase transition. And in this case, I will compare three different mass ratios for the C case, compared with the original equation of state without the phase transition. So these are some of the basic of the initial parameters of the binary. And basically, as other groups found before, there are basically no differences during the inspiral, but there may be strong differences in the dynamics and in the gravitational waves after the merger. Basically, what we see here is the A and the B case collapse to a black hole just after the merger, while the original equation of state, the SLY, doesn't. And the one that doesn't collapse to a black hole, that it could be the C case, it still shows some differences in the dynamics. Basically, the central density is very different than for the SLY, and the frequency of the main gravitational mode is also different. So this can be seen more clearly if we perform the Fourier transform of the post-merger signal, where we see that the original equation, or with the original equation of states, it peaks, or the gravitational wave signal peaks at 3 kilohertz. But with this modified equation of state that contains a phase transition, even if it is small, it peaks slightly higher frequencies. Now we can repeat the same or similar simulations considering unequal mass stars with a mass ratio of 4.86. And basically we obtain the same, that for some of the modified equation of state, the remnant collapses to a black hole. And for the others, the frequency increases with respect to the unmodified equation of state. So what it is interesting is, or what would be interesting is to find a universal relation of the frequency of this post-merger frequency of the main gravitational wave mode as a function of the initial parameters of the binary. And that universal relation would be different depending on the equation of state that we are being considered. So here I am showing in the dots and the crosses are, well, the dots are the results of our simulation with the equation of state that doesn't have any phase transition. The crosses corresponds to the results of the post-merger frequency with the equation of state that contains some phase transition, and the lines are basically fits. The green and black line are fits from the literature, where they have been measuring these frequencies with in many simulations, and then fitting them with this, or between these two curves. So this would be like the results for almost any hadronic equation of state. Should have a frequency after the merger that should be contained between those two lines. And the yellow line is the fit that we obtain with the results of these simulations with the KC that has some phase transition, not only hadronic matter, but a phase transition to quark matter. So basically, what we see that it shows some quasi-normal, some quasi-universal relation also for these phase transition equations of state at higher frequencies than when there is no phase transition. And this higher frequency, or the distance between these frequencies, is basically proportional to the size of the phase transition. So these are basically the results of this work, that phase transition can change the Newtonian star core structure, which has some implications on the observability of gravitational waves. Unfortunately, well, they also can modify the magnetic fields in the interior, but this distortion of the magnetic fields will not propagate easily to the surface. So that limits the possible observations of electromagnetic signals of this phase transition, and that basically the main effect is that the phase transition increased the frequency of oscillation of the remnant during the post-merger. And there are some other possibilities to study in the future, like tidal interactions in eccentric binaries that can induce also the phase transition, actually can induce it in both directions. And also the phase transition can generate, can transform some of the kinetic energy into heat that may also be observable in some way. And that's all. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have any question, I will be happy to.
Thank you, Carlos.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, I have one probably simple question. Is there an intuitive physical reason why the post-merger oscillation frequency is higher if you have phase transition? Has this to do with increased compactness or something like this?
Yes, I think that the main reason is because the core becomes more compact, or the density at the core becomes higher. So that changes the quadrupolar moment, and it rotates faster, the star. So that that basically increases the frequency of the remnant and the frequency of the gravitational waves. But it's basically because you accumulate matter near the center, and then it rotates faster.
Yeah, I have another question. Which kind of initial data and boundary conditions are you using? Because you told that you take a neutron star or a binary source, and then you evolve with other equation of state, which the phase transition is encoded. So you have to solve a first system and then evolve over time, or what? Yeah,
well, what we do is we use the library Lorraine to construct that solves initial data for binary neutron stars, and in that library you can specify the code equation of state with these piecewise polytopes that I have in the table. So basically, we define what is the separation between the stars. We define what is the mass of each star, and we define the equation of state for each star with the coefficients that from the table, and then the solver constructs or solve for the initial data. That is the initial, and then we read it in our code and perform the evolution. And the boundary conditions, we're using basically relative boundary conditions. We said the boundaries of our domain are very far away. It's much higher than the wave zone. So if we measure waves at 200 or 500 n in the total mass of the system, the boundaries are usually 3 or 4 times farther away. So the relative boundary conditions is a very good approximation for such large distances.
What is the reason behind the choices of the little q's? I mean, 0.8, 0.9, I mean,
yeah.
Would be a problem to take, say, 0.75 to 1.5?
Well, there are 2 reasons. One is technical and the other is experimental. From observations, I think that the highest mass ratio or the lowest mass ratio with this definition that has been observed is around 0.8 or 0.85 in binary neutron stars. So it seems that nature, for some reason, either we don't observe them, or that it could be a observational bias, or nature doesn't naturally produce very unequal mass neutron stars. And between this range of 0.8 to 1, yeah, we could construct basically anything. Also, the initial data solvers of Lorraine, for instance, have difficulties to find a solution when the mass ratio is very small or is very large. It's very different. So nature doesn't produce them easily, or at least we don't observe them. And from the technical point of view, the solver have difficulties to find solutions in that regime. So those are basically the 2 reasons why we were exploring these values that are closer to the ones that have been observed so far.
I have a question. How do you simulate the thermal component of the equation of the state?
Yeah, the thermal component is just an ideal gas. It's actually there. We assume that there are 2 that the pressure is given by 2 components. One is that is cold, that is given by a piecewise polytrope with this equation here. And the thermal part follows an equation, ideal gas equation of state, that is gamma minus 1 rho epsilon, being epsilon the thermal energy of the system. So and that thermal energy is basically is part of the total one. So we solve for the total, we subtract. So our evolution equations give us in some way the total pressure and total density, and total pressure and total internal energy. We also have the density from the evolution. So when we know the density, we can compute the thermal, the cold part, and the thermal we subtracted from the total minus the cold. So let me say it again without making any mistake. So our evolution equations for the conservation of energy momentum and baryonic number give us the density, pressure, and internal energy, total ones. With the density, we can construct or compute the P cold and internal and the cold part of the internal energy, because it's just a function of the density. And then we can just subtract to compute the thermal part of the internal energy. and the thermal part of the pressure.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Y la gente que anda.
Sí, buena pregunta.
Yeah, may I ask a question?
Yes, sure.
Yeah, so Carlos, thanks for your presentation. I have a question about the size of the phase transition. I mean the leap on the energy density, because you showed that only the case C, if I'm not wrong, is the only one that doesn't collapse to a black hole after the merger.
Yes,
So,
yes,
yeah.
for these modifications of the equation of state, yes.
So if well, we have right now we have some data about neutron star mergers, but I think they are too little, about 2 binary neutron stars. But in the future, this could say something about how big is the leap on energy. If we suppose that there is a phase transition and the remnant is still a neutron star and not a black hole.
Yeah, in principle, well, I was a little bit fast in this part, but there are 3 ways basically that the phase transition can change the equation of state. One is the parameters are the onset of the density where the phase transition occurs, then the size of the phase transition, and then the adiabatic index after the phase transition. Here, I only change basically one of the 3 parameters and just show what is the effect of the size of the phase transition. And if this is the only effect, or this is the only parameter that I change, then the result is always the same, is that as you increase the size, you make the star more unstable, basically. And the frequency of the post-merger will be higher. But that is I am only changing one. So maybe you change the other or 2 of these parameters simultaneously, you can there can be some degeneracy on the results. So that I cannot tell. And that is something that has to be studied in the future. Then basically there are 2 ways of facing this problem. Either you study a particular equation of state with a particular phase transition, either a first order one or a smooth one, with based on some model, like the hyperons that I was mentioning at the beginning, or you just try to parameterize all the different changes and see what is the effect, and try to find some scaling law. And that is, well, we are going on the second approach, but well, we only have partial results so far.
Okay, thanks.
Carlos, I have a general question. Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, hello, Carlos.
Hi.
No, this is very, very broad. So you have been playing with many equations of state and some. So is there any possibility that you can find something which is compact enough to lie below its photosphere? I mean, or is this far away? I mean, I think between the Buchwald bound and the photosphere.
Unlikely. It's yeah, because those compactness are at those compactness, the equation of state starts to be non-causal in the sense that the sound speed starts to be above light speed.
Okay.
At least for the equations of state that are usually, or that I have seen, or that I know.
Okay.
So
no, since you were playing with generic things that you said agnostic approach, so maybe you could tweak things that even if you cannot justify from first principle, you say, well, here's a toy model that gives something which is looks like a black hole from far. No?
Yeah, I have played actually in the past, or I have tried to find some black hole mimickers, and the only ways to go or to construct an object that has a photosphere is either you consider anisotropic stars, where the tangential pressure is different from the radial pressure, or some exotic objects like very compact solitonic boson stars or something like that. But with neutron stars, with the standard equation of state, even if they have some phase transition, I didn't find any yet that could have a photosphere.
Yeah, because even if it was kind of metastable, you might check things like the echoes, these echoes, echo hypothesis. Yeah. Okay, fine, very nice. Thank you.
I have a question, if I can ask.
Sure.
Can you hear me? So first of all, sorry for missing basically the whole talk because I had a medical appointment, so I just made it now. I've been playing with simulations of neutron stars, and I've come across this thing that people call the one-arm instability, which basically is a phenomenon in which you start with a configuration that is supposed to be symmetric, and then an asymmetry develops. And this is very useful from the data analysis point of view, because this gives you some extra gravitational wave modes that help you to measure the inclination of the system, therefore the distance, therefore the Hubble constant. So the first question is if you have seen this in all of your simulations, and the second is if you know how.
Sorry, if I know?
So if you've seen this effect of the one-arm spiral instability in your simulations, and if so, how much does it depend on the equation of state that you implement?
No, I didn't. Actually, we didn't look for that effect in our simulations, but it is a very good point. We should. I will take a look on. For some reason, we were just looking at the main gravitational wave mode, and we didn't think on looking at the others. But you are right. There may be, especially in the cases with unequal masses, the one-arm instability may develop quickly, and it may be different when there is a phase transition. That's a good point. We didn't look at that, but we will. Thanks for the suggestion.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, if there are no more questions, I think we can all thank Carlos again for the nice talk.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, goodbye, Carlos.
Bye.
Hasta la vista.